Diamond Johnson had three unbreakable rules for surviving the world. Never blur professional lines. Never ignore red flags in men who smile too easily. And never, under any circumstances, attend a family gala before the 6-month mark. Standing in the Park Estate's marble ballroom, wearing a scarlet evening gown that Park Ye-jun had sent to her apartment with a note saying, "Trust me," watching gold leaf ceiling fixtures throw light that felt more like surveillance than illumination, she realized she'd shattered all three. And the bill was about to come due. "You're shaking," Ye-jun whispered, his thumb tracing circles on her lower back in a gesture that should have been soothing but felt like a brand. "There's nothing to be nervous about." Nervous didn't begin to cover it. The dress clung to her like a second skin, sleeveless, form-fitting, the kind of red that announced rather than whispered. It was beautiful. It was a declaration. It was a costume for a role Diamond hadn't auditioned for. She stared up at the estate as they'd arrived, a sprawling structure of pale stone and wrought iron that looked less like a family home and more like something built to withstand a siege. Light poured from every window, but the shadows behind the glass moved with purpose, with surveillance. "You said this was Sunday dinner," Diamond said, her voice steady despite the way her pulse hammered. "Intimate. It is intimate." Ye-jun's smile was effortless, the same one he'd used when he'd wandered into the upscale restaurant where she waited tables, claiming he needed someone to help him practice English for business meetings. "Just family. Very low-key. There are men in earpieces at the gate, Ye-jun. And that's not a string quartet. That's a full chamber orchestra. The chairman's jubilee is a Park family tradition." His hand shifted, guiding her up marble steps worn smooth by generations. "My grandfather started it 30 years ago when the business went legitimate. It's just us celebrating another year of success." Diamond had grown up in a cramped Queens apartment where family dinner meant her mother, her younger sister, and whatever she could afford to bring home from her shift. This felt like stepping into a world that existed behind glass, beautiful, expensive, and absolutely not meant for her. How many people qualify as just family? Maybe 50, 60, if the soul cousins made it. He pulled her closer, his cologne expensive and cloying. "Relax, beautiful. Smile at whoever my father introduces you to. Don't ask questions about business, and everything will be perfect." That sounds like a script. It's called discretion. His voice cooled, just a degree, just enough. "This family values loyalty. Show them you understand boundaries, and they'll welcome you." The door swung open before they reached it. A man in his 60s stood in the entrance. Not a butler, something else, his posture military straight, his eyes sweeping over Diamond with clinical assessment. He bowed slightly to Ye-jun, spoke 3 words in Korean, then stepped aside. The foyer alone could have swallowed her entire apartment. White marble floors reflected crystal chandeliers. A grand staircase curved upward like a spine. Original art, modern pieces that belonged in museums, lined walls painted in shades of cream and black. Park Ye-jun, a voice called from the interior, Korean accented but fluent. "You're 20 minutes late." An older woman emerged from what looked like a formal sitting room. She was petite, elegant in a tailored black dress and pearls, her silver hair styled in a perfect chignon. Her face was unlined, but her eyes, dark, sharp, impossibly focused, carried decades of authority. "Grandmother, this is Diamond," Ye-jun said in English, his hand tightening on Diamond's waist. "Diamond, my grandmother, Madame Park Sunny." "Madame Park." Diamond extended her hand, forcing her voice to project confidence she didn't feel. "Thank you so much for having me in your home." Sunhee studied the offered hand as if it were evidence in a trial. Then she took it, her grip cool, dry, surprisingly strong. "Diamond Johnson," she said, tasting each syllable. "The waitress." It wasn't a question. It was a filing system. Yes, ma'am. I work at Maria. Scholarship to Queen's College. Studio apartment in Astoria. You send money home to your mother and sister every month. Very admirable. Sunhee released her hand. My grandson says you have good character. Diamond's blood turned to ice water. The depth of the research, the casual delivery, this wasn't vetting. This was inventory. Sunhee turned to Yejun, speaking rapid Korean. Whatever she said made Yejun's jaw tighten, made his easy smile sharpen into something defensive. Then she looked back at Diamond, and something shifted behind her eyes. Not warmth, calculation. Come inside before the appetizers are cleared, she said. If my grandson brought you here, I suppose I should determine why. She disappeared into the house like smoke. That went well, Yejun said. How could you possibly? She didn't have you escorted out. Trust me, that's progress. He guided her forward, his hand now feeling less like affection and more like control. Just stay close to me. Everything's fine. The interior made the foyer look modest. A grand ballroom opened before them. 50, 60 people in designer clothing, holding crystal glasses, speaking in a mix of Korean and English. A string orchestra played something classical from a raised platform. Servers moved through the crowd like shadows, offering champagne and small plates of food that looked like art. Yejun led her through introductions that blurred together. Uncle Jin-ho, Aunt Mi-sun, cousins whose names she lost immediately, a brother named Taehyun who barely glanced at her before returning to his phone. Before we dive deeper into this story, take a moment to hit that like button if you love suspenseful, emotional stories that keep you on the edge of your seat. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next thrilling chapter. We also want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Whether it's your city, your country, or even just your favorite spot to watch these stories, we love connecting with our global audience. Now let's get back to the story and see just how far courage can take someone when danger is closing in. This is Yejun's waitress. Someone murmured in Korean, just loud enough for Diamond to catch. American, another voice replied. He always chooses Americans. Easier to manage. Diamond's throat tightened, but she kept her face neutral, kept her spine straight. Come meet the chairman, Yejun said, either oblivious or deliberately ignoring the whispers trailing them like smoke. Park Min-jun stood near the orchestra, speaking in low tones with 3 men in suits that probably cost more than Diamond's yearly rent. He was shorter than she'd imagined, compact and solid, with silver at his temples and the kind of stillness that suggested coiled power. When he saw them approach, he stopped mid-sentence. His eyes, the same dark, unreadable eyes as his mother, locked onto Diamond with laser precision. Father, Yejun said. This is Diamond Johnson. Diamond, my father, Chairman Park Min-jun. Min-jun studied her the way a jeweler studies a stone of uncertain value. His gaze traveled over her dress, her shoes, the simple gold studs her mother had given her for graduation. Then he smiled. Warm. Genuine. Absolutely terrifying. Welcome to our home, Miss Johnson, he said in perfect, unaccented English. My son speaks very highly of you. Thank you, Chairman Park. Your home is beautiful. Please, Min-jun is fine among family. He gestured to the room, to the crowd of people who looked like they belonged in boardrooms and on magazine covers. You drink whiskey? Yes, sir. Good. Yejun, get her the Yamazaki. Top shelf. As Yejun moved toward the bar, Min-jun stepped closer, his voice dropping to something almost intimate. My mother thinks you're after her money, he said pleasantly, as if discussing the weather. My wife thinks you're too different. I think, he paused, his smile never faltering. I think you're not dating my son at all, Diamond. The words hit like ice water. What? You're not dating my son. His eyes bored into hers. You're being vetted. For my other son. The room tilted. Before Diamond could process, couldn't breathe, couldn't think, the atmosphere changed. Not physically, something deeper. The temperature dropped. Every conversation stuttered and stopped. Someone had arrived. A woman near Diamond inhaled sharply. He came. I didn't think he would come. Footsteps echoed from the entrance. Heavy, measured, deliberate. A voice spoke in Korean, low, rough, carrying the kind of command that didn't request attention. It seized it. Madam Park's response from across the room was sharp, almost satisfied. Chung-ah. The name rippled through the crowd like a shockwave. Recognition. Tension. Fear. That's the older brother, someone whispered beside Diamond. Chung Ye-jun. The one who actually runs things. He never comes to these. Why would he? The man who walked into the ballroom made Diamond forget every word she'd prepared to say. He was taller than Ye-jun, broader through the shoulders, built like something designed to endure rather than charm. He wore a black tuxedo that fit like it had been designed specifically to make people uneasy, perfectly tailored, perfectly sharp. His hair was slicked back, his jawline defined, and a distinctive black tattoo curved up the side of his neck, disappearing beneath his collar. But it was his eyes that stopped her heart. Dark. Intense. Fixed on her face with the precision of a predator who'd already decided on prey. He moved through the crowd like everyone else was furniture. No one spoke. No one approached. He stopped 3 feet from Diamond. So, Chung Ye-jun said, his voice like gravel and silk. You're the one who's been dancing with the wrong brother. And Diamond realized with absolute, bone-deep certainty. She'd never been Ye-jun's at all. Diamond's vision tunneled. The ballroom, the orchestra, the crystal, the 50 faces pretending not to watch, compressed into a single point of focus. Chairman Park Min-jun's smile. That warm, genuine, absolutely terrifying smile. I don't understand, she managed, her voice steadier than her heartbeat had any right to allow. No, Min-jun agreed pleasantly. You wouldn't. That was intentional. He took a sip of his whiskey, unhurried. My younger son has many talents, Miss Johnson. Charm, ease, the ability to make people feel safe. He paused. My older son has different talents. More valuable ones. But they require a certain type of partner. Someone who can't be bought. Someone who doesn't scare easily. Someone with, his eyes traveled over her face, assessing, substance. The word landed like a diagnosis. You used me. The words came out flat, factual. Accusation would have required air Diamond no longer had access to. We vetted you, Min-jun corrected. There's a difference. Ye-jun dated you. Genuinely, I might add. The boy has excellent taste even when following orders. For 6 months, we watched. How you handle pressure. How you treat people with less power than you. Whether you ask questions about money or business. Whether you're patient, discreet, loyal. He tilted his head. You passed every test. Tests I didn't know I was taking. The best kind. His smile never wavered. Do you know how many women my younger son has dated in the past 5 years? 17. Do you know how many have been invited to a family event? He held up one finger. You're not here because Ye-jun wanted you here, Diamond. You're here because Chung requested it. Her hands were shaking. She forced them still, forced her spine straight, forced herself to meet his eyes. Requested what, exactly? To meet the woman we've selected for him. Selected. Not chosen. Not pursued. Selected. Like produce. Like property. And if I don't want to be selected? Her voice gained an edge, anger finally cutting through shock. Minjun's expression shifted. Not displeasure, something closer to satisfaction. Then you walk out that door right now, and we never contact you again. Yejun will be heartbroken for approximately 2 weeks. You'll go back to your restaurant, your studio apartment, your life. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. But you won't be safe from him. From who? My son doesn't accept rejection well. Not when he's decided on something. Minjun straightened. Chung has been watching you for 6 months, Diamond. He knows where you work, where you live, what time you leave in the morning, what route you take home at night. He knows your mother's address in Queens, knows your sister attends nursing school on scholarship. The chairman's voice remained pleasant, conversational. He's not a man who makes impulsive decisions. When he chooses something, he keeps it. The threat was wrapped in courtesy, but it was still a threat. You're telling me I don't have a choice. You have too. Minjun gestured toward the entrance. Leave now, and spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, wondering when he'll decide to collect what he believes is his. Or, he gestured toward where Chung Yejun stood across the ballroom, still watching her with those dark, unwavering eyes. You stay. You meet him properly. You see if maybe, just maybe, this arrangement could become something more than a transaction. Diamond's mind raced. 6 months. 6 months of coffee dates and late-night conversations. 6 months of Yejun's easy laughter and casual touches. 6 months of believing she'd found something simple, something safe, something that wouldn't demand more than she could give. All of it staged. All of it surveillance. Did Yejun know? The question came out raw. The whole time, from the beginning. Minjun's honesty felt like a knife. My sons are loyal to this family above all else. Yejun played his role well because he understands what his brother needs, what this family needs. Betrayal tasted like copper and champagne. Across the room, Yejun returned with her whiskey, his expression concerned, apologetic, guilty. He'd known. Every smile, every kiss, every whispered promise, he'd known she was never his to keep. Why me? Diamond heard herself ask. I'm a waitress from Queens. I have student loans and a 10-year-old car. I don't fit into this world. Exactly. Minjun took her hand, not threatening, almost paternal. My older son doesn't need someone who fits. He needs someone who survives. Someone who built herself from nothing. Someone who won't crumble when the reality of his world becomes clear. His grip tightened fractionally. Someone strong enough to stand beside him instead of behind him. And if I'm not interested in standing anywhere near him? The chairman's smile finally faded. What replaced it was something colder, more honest. Then you're not the woman we thought you were. And Chum will be very disappointed. The way he said disappointed made it sound like a funeral. Diamond pulled her hand free. Her pulse hammered in her ears, but her voice came out clear, steady, unbroken. I need to think.
No.
The word was gentle but absolute. You need to decide.
Right now.
He's waiting. She looked across the ballroom. Chung Yejun hadn't moved, hadn't broken his stare. He stood like a pillar of black-suited certainty, radiating patience and possession in equal measure. The crowd gave him space, an unconscious circle of deference and fear. He wasn't asking permission. He was waiting for her to accept the inevitable. Diamond thought of her mother's warnings about men who smiled too easily. She thought of her 3 broken rules, shattered on marble floors. She thought of 6 months of lies wrapped in affection. She thought of the tattoo curving up his neck, the darkness in his eyes, the way the entire room bent around him like gravity. What happens, she asked quietly, if I stay and it doesn't work? Minjun's smile returned, warm and terrible. My dear girl, that's not an option he's prepared to consider. He gestured toward his older son. Chung Ye-jun's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. Anticipation, claim, certainty. Diamond took a breath that felt like surrender and began walking toward the man who'd been hunting her all along. Chung Ye-jun didn't wait for her to cross the distance. He met her halfway, his presence swallowing the space between them like a gravitational collapse. Up close, he was more than tall, he was overwhelming. Broad shoulders that blocked her view of the room, a frame built for violence wrapped in expensive tailoring. The black tattoo on his neck curved like smoke, like a brand, disappearing beneath his collar in a way that promised more beneath. Diamond Johnson. Her name and his voice sounded like ownership. Come with me. It wasn't a request. His hand wrapped around her wrist, not pulling, not dragging, but claiming. His grip was warm, firm, absolute. Before she could respond, he was moving, guiding her through the crowd that parted for him like water around stone. No one spoke. No one met his eyes. Ye-jun stood by the bar, holding her whiskey, watching them pass with an expression somewhere between regret and relief. He didn't try to stop them. Didn't even move. 6 months, and he'd always been a placeholder. Chung led her past the ballroom, through a corridor lined with art that probably cost more than her education, past security personnel who nodded once and looked away. He pushed open a heavy door, and suddenly they were in another world entirely. His private study was all dark wood and darker leather, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking manicured gardens lit by subtle landscape lighting. A massive desk dominated one wall, its surface clear except for a single crystal tumbler half-filled with amber liquid. Everything here spoke of control, isolation, power exercised in silence. He released her wrist and moved to close the door. The click of the lock was quiet, final. Sit. He gestured to one of the leather chairs facing the desk. Diamond remained standing. I'd prefer not to. Something flickered in his eyes. Amusement. Maybe approval. Good. I was told you had spine. He moved to the bar cart, poured 2 fingers of whiskey into a second glass, and crossed to her, holding it out. You'll want this. She took it but didn't drink.
Didn't trust what might be in it.
Didn't trust anything about this moment. Chung studied her with the same intensity from across the ballroom, but closer now, suffocating. His eyes were almost black in the low light, unblinking, patient. He had the kind of face that would have been beautiful if it weren't so dangerous. Sharp cheekbones, defined jaw shadowed with stubble, lips that looked like they rarely smiled and never apologized. You're angry, he observed. You had me surveilled for 6 months. 7. He took a sip of his whiskey, unhurried. I've been watching you for 7 months. The arrangement with my brother lasted 6. 7 months. 7 months of her life under a microscope she hadn't known existed. Why? The word came out sharper than she intended. Why go through all of this? If you wanted to meet me, you could have just approached you at your restaurant. His voice carried a thread of dark amusement. Asked you on a date like a normal man? Courted you properly? He stepped closer, erasing another foot of distance between them. I'm not a normal man, Diamond. And what I wanted required certainty, not chance. Certainty about what? That you were worth the risk. He set his glass down on the desk without looking, his eyes never leaving her face. Do you know what I do? What this family really is beneath the legitimate businesses and the charitable foundations? I can guess. Then you understand that the woman who stands beside me becomes a target. Every rival, every ambitious underboss, every prosecutor looking to make a name, they all see her as leverage, as weakness. He moved closer still, close enough that she could smell his cologne, expensive and predatory. I needed to know you wouldn't break, wouldn't run. Wouldn't sell me out for money or safety or fear. So you had your brother lie to me. I had my brother protect you. His voice dropped, rougher. Every man you meet in my world comes with an agenda. Every conversation is a negotiation. Every touch is a transaction. Yejun gave you 6 months of safety. 6 months where you could be yourself without the weight of my name, my reputation, my reality crushing down on you. How generous. It was. No apology in his tone, just fact. Because now I know exactly who you are. Not who you pretend to be when you're afraid, or who you become when you're trying to survive. I know the woman who sends half her paycheck to her mother every month, who covered her sister's textbooks when the scholarship didn't, who stood up to a drunk customer twice your size and didn't back down when he got aggressive. He reached out, his fingers grazing the curve of her jaw, tilting her face up to meet his eyes. I know the woman who doesn't break. Diamond jerked away from his touch, her pulse hammering. You don't know me at all. You know a file. Research. Surveillance. I know you're standing here instead of running. His hand dropped, but his gaze didn't. I know you walked toward me even after my father told you what I am. I know. He stepped forward again, backing her against the desk, his hands bracing on either side of her, caging her in. His voice went deadly quiet. I know you're terrified right now, but you're still meeting my eyes. Still fighting. That's all I needed to know. This close, she could see the tattoo extended further than she'd thought, black ink disappearing beneath his collar, wrapping around toward his shoulder. A dragon, maybe. Something meant to mark him as dangerous, as claimed by violence. What do you want from me? Her voice came out steadier than her heartbeat. Everything. No hesitation. No pretense. I want you beside me. In public, where everyone sees that you chose this. In private, where no one can touch you. I want your loyalty, your trust, your presence. His hand lifted, fingers threading through the hair at the nape of her neck, possessive and careful all at once. I want you to stop looking at the door like you're calculating escape routes and start looking at me like you understand what's being offered. You're not offering anything. You're taking. Yes. The admission was immediate, honest, brutal. Because asking gave you the illusion of choice, and I'm not interested in illusions. You're mine, Diamond. You've been mine since the first time I watched you shut down that handsy investment banker at table 6 with nothing but a smile and a well-placed elbow. You just didn't know it yet. Her breath caught. That had been 8 months ago. Before Yejun. Before any of this. You're insane. Probably. He leaned closer, his mouth inches from her ear, his voice dropping to something that felt like a threat and a promise tangled together. But I'm also very patient. And very thorough. And now that you're here, now that you've walked into my world with your eyes open. He pulled back just enough to meet her gaze, his expression shifting into something darker, hungrier. You're not walking back out. And if I refuse? His smile was slow, dangerous, absolutely certain. You won't. The worst part was that he was right. Standing there, trapped between his arms and his certainty, Diamond felt the ground shift beneath her carefully constructed life. Felt 6 months of lies crystallize into something terrifyingly real. She'd walked toward him. She was still standing here. And some traitorous part of her wanted to see what happened next. What now? She whispered. Chung Yejun's smile widened, claiming and victorious. Now you meet the rest of the family. As mine. Chung stepped back, giving her space that felt more like strategy than mercy. He moved to the windows, his silhouette dark against the garden lights, and when he spoke again, his voice had changed. No longer seductive or possessive, clinical. Factual. Before you decide anything, you need to understand what you're accepting. He didn't turn to face her. My father runs the legitimate side of this family. Real estate, imports, investments. Everything clean, everything documented, everything designed to look respectable.
He paused.
I run everything else. The silence stretched. Diamond's grip tightened on her untouched whiskey. Protection, enforcement, strategic acquisitions that don't appear in quarterly reports. I handle problems that can't be solved with lawyers or accountants. His reflection in the window was expressionless. I've killed men, Diamond. Not in passion, not in self-defense. As policy, as business, as warning. Her stomach turned to ice. The tattoo you see? He touched the side of his neck absently. It marks rank.
Authority.
In certain circles, it means I'm untouchable. In others, it means I'm a target. Finally, he turned to face her. Anyone who stands beside me inherits both. The power and the crosshairs. Why are you telling me this? Because I won't have you claim ignorance later. He moved toward her again, but this time there was no seduction in his approach, just ruthless honesty. If you become mine, there are no casual dinners with friends. No spontaneous trips. No privacy. You'll have security following you everywhere. Your phone, your computer, your mail, all monitored. Not because I don't trust you, but because my enemies will use any vulnerability they can find. Diamond set her glass down on the desk, her hand shaking despite her best efforts. You're describing a prison. I'm describing survival. His eyes bored into hers. 6 months ago, a rival organization kidnapped the girlfriend of one of my lieutenants. They sent her back in pieces over the course of 2 weeks. Not because she'd done anything wrong, just to send a message. The image hit like a physical blow. That won't happen to you, he continued, his voice softening fractionally. Because you'll be protected in ways she wasn't. Because you'll have my name, my resources, my absolute commitment to keeping you alive. He reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek with surprising gentleness. But you need to understand that the protection comes with a cage. A gilded one, but still a cage. And if I can't live like that, his hand dropped. Then you walk out that door right now. He gestured toward the exit. I'll have my driver take you home. You pack a bag. By morning, you'll be on a flight to anywhere in the world you want to go. New identity, new papers, enough money to start over. His expression went cold. You'll be free. Hope flickered, dangerous and desperate. Really? Really? He moved to the desk, pulled open a drawer, and removed a thick envelope. He held it out to her. Inside is a phone number. One call, and everything I just described becomes reality. You disappear. Clean break. Diamond stared at the envelope. Freedom. Escape. Everything she should want. But the word dropped like a guillotine. You need to understand what walking away means. He set the envelope on the desk between them. I won't follow you immediately. I'll give you time to settle, to believe you're safe. 6 months. Maybe a year. His voice went deadly quiet. And then one day, you'll turn around, and I'll be there. In your new city. Outside your new job. Standing in your new apartment. Her blood turned to ice water. I'm not a man who gives up what's mine, Diamond. I'm just a man who's willing to wait. He leaned against the desk, arms crossed, utterly calm. So your choice is this. Accept what I'm offering now, the protection, the power, the life beside me, or spend the rest of your existence looking over your shoulder, wondering when I'll decide to collect. That's not a choice. Her voice cracked on the words. That's coercion. Yes. No apology. No shame. But it's the only choice I'm offering. Because I've already decided you're mine. The only variable is whether you come willingly or whether I have to be patient. Diamond felt the room closing in. Every exit blocked. Every option poisoned. Why me? The question came out raw, desperate. Out of everyone in the world, why fixate on me? For the first time, something unguarded flickered across his face. Because you're the first woman I've met who didn't flinch when my name was mentioned, who looked at me like I was human before you knew what I was. He straightened, moving closer. Because when I had you investigated, I expected to find cracks. Greed, ambition, weakness. Instead, I found someone who splits tips with the kitchen staff and covers shifts for single mothers and tells handsy customers to fuck off with a smile. He reached out, his hand cupping her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. I found someone real in a world full of transactions. Someone who survived without becoming cruel. Someone strong enough to stand in my world without being consumed by it. His thumb traced her cheekbone. I found you, and I'm not letting you go. Diamond's breath caught, trapped between his certainty and her own spiraling fear. How long do I have to decide? 30 minutes. He released her, checking his watch with casual brutality. The family is waiting to see if you accept. If you say yes, we go back out there, and I introduce you properly. If you say no, he gestured to the envelope. Make the call, and you're gone by dawn. 30 minutes to decide the rest of my life. 30 minutes to acknowledge what you already know. He moved toward the door, then paused, looking back at her. You walked toward me, Diamond. Not away. Not toward the exit.
Toward me.
You've already decided. You just haven't admitted it yet. He opened the door and stepped into the corridor. I'll be right outside. When you're ready to stop pretending you have a choice, let me know. The door closed with a soft click, and then she heard it, the unmistakable sound of a lock engaging from the outside. She was alone. Diamond turned slowly, taking in the elegant prison he'd left her in. The windows were sealed. The door was locked. The envelope on the desk seemed to pulse with false promise. She moved to the window, pressing her palm against the cold glass. Beyond the manicured gardens, beyond the walls and the security and the careful illusion of normalcy, was her life. Her apartment.
Her job.
Her freedom. Her old life. She thought of her mother's voice on the phone last week. You sound happy, baby. This boy treating you right. She thought of her sister's excitement. Finally, you found someone good. They didn't know.
Couldn't know.
Would never understand the choice being forced on her in this beautiful, suffocating room. Diamond looked at the envelope, then at the locked door, then at her reflection in the dark glass, a woman in a red dress standing at the edge of a cliff, trying to decide whether to jump or be pushed. The clock on the wall ticked louder with every passing second. 28 minutes left. Diamond sank into the leather chair she'd refused earlier, her legs finally giving out. 26 minutes left. The clock ticked like a countdown to execution. She closed her eyes and let herself remember what she'd spent years trying to forget. She was 17 again, standing in the cramped kitchen of their Queens apartment, watching her mother's hands shake as she read the eviction notice. 3 months behind on rent because Marcus, her mother's boyfriend of 2 years, had promised to handle it, had smiled that easy, charming smile and said, "Baby, don't worry about money. I've got us covered." He hadn't. He'd gambled it away. Every dollar her mother had saved, every bit of stability they'd clawed toward, gone. And when her mother had confronted him, when she'd finally asked the hard questions she should have asked months earlier, he'd walked out. No apology. No explanation. Just gone. Diamond had watched her mother cry for 3 days straight. Watched a woman who'd raised 2 daughters alone, who'd worked double shifts and skipped meals to keep them fed, crumble because she'd trusted the wrong man's smile. Never blur professional lines. That rule had formed the night 17-year-old Diamond had taken a job at the diner down the block, determined to never be the reason her mother cried again. Work was survival. Mixing it with personal feelings meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant destruction. The second rule came 2 years later, at 19. She'd been in community college, working nights to pay tuition, when she'd met David. He was a customer, always kind, always generous with tips, always asking about her day like he actually cared. When he finally asked her out, she'd said yes. Ignored the small red flags. The way he needed to know where she was constantly. The way he isolated her from friends. The way his compliments always came with subtle criticisms. By the time his hand wrapped around her throat in his apartment, because she'd smiled at another man, because she'd dared to make him jealous, she'd already lost 6 months of her life to his control. She'd fought back. Broken his nose with her mother's self-defense training echoing in her ears. Called the police herself. Pressed charges even when he'd tried to apologize, to explain, to smile that easy smile and promise it would never happen again. Never ignore red flags in men who smile too easily. She'd carved that rule into her heart with the bruises still visible on her neck. The third rule, never attend family events too soon, that had come from watching her sister. Sweet, trusting Imani, who'd fallen hard for a guy junior year of college. Met his parents at Thanksgiving after dating for 2 months. Let herself believe that meeting the family meant commitment, meant future, meant forever. He'd ghosted her a week later. Just stopped answering calls. Moved on to someone else without explanation. And Imani had been devastated not just by the loss, but by the humiliation of having met his entire family, of having imagined a future that he'd never intended to provide. Diamond had held her sister while she sobbed and sworn she'd never be that naive. Never that vulnerable. Never move too fast with someone who hadn't proven himself worthy of that level of trust. 3 rules. 3 scars. 3 walls built to keep her safe. And she'd shattered every single one for Yejune's smile. No, for Chung's plan. Diamond opened her eyes, staring at the locked door. The bitter irony wasn't lost on her. She'd built her entire life around avoiding men like Chung Yejun, men who took control. Men who manipulated. Men who decided what was best for her, without asking. And yet, she thought of the way his eyes had tracked her across the ballroom. Not with the lazy appreciation Yejun had shown, but with focus. Intent. Like she was the only person in the room that mattered. She thought of his hand on her face, possessive but careful, demanding but not cruel. She thought of his voice when he'd said, "I found someone real." Her pulse quickened, and she hated herself for it. This was Stockholm Syndrome. Trauma response. Her brain trying to rationalize captivity by finding something attractive in her captor. She knew this, had read about it, had sworn she'd never be the woman who fell for her abuser. But Chung wasn't David. David had pretended to be safe and revealed violence. Chung was advertising the violence up front, showing her exactly what he was, and somehow that honesty felt more trustworthy than any pretty lie. God, she was losing her mind. Diamond stood, pacing the length of the study. 15 minutes left. She'd survived her mother's heartbreak by becoming financially independent. She'd survived David by learning to fight back, to trust her instincts, to value her safety over loneliness. She'd survived watching Imani's devastation by keeping her heart guarded, by moving slowly, by demanding proof before giving trust. She'd survived by being strong. And Chung had seen that strength, watched it for 7 months. Tested it through Yejune's careful courtship. Recognized something in her that she'd barely recognized in herself. The ability to endure. To adapt. To stand firm even when the ground shifted beneath her feet. He wanted her because she was a survivor. The realization hit like cold water. He didn't want someone fragile who needed protecting. He wanted someone who could protect herself, who could stand in his world and not shatter, who could see the monster he was and not run screaming. Her hands were shaking again, but not just from fear. She thought of the way his presence had made the entire ballroom hold its breath. The way men twice his age had stepped aside without being asked. The power that radiated from him like heat, dangerous and intoxicating. She thought of his hand caging her against the desk, his mouth near her ear, his absolute certainty that she belonged to him. And God help her, some dark part of her had wanted to test that certainty. To push back and see what happened. To find out if his control extended to everything, or if there was space for her to carve out her own power within his world. She was attracted to him. The admission felt like betrayal of herself, her rules, her hard-won independence. But it was true. Underneath the fear and the fury and the frustration, there was something else. Something that had sparked to life the moment his eyes locked onto hers across the ballroom. Recognition. He saw her. Not the waitress, not the scholarship student, not the girl from Queens trying to make something of herself. He saw the woman who'd survived Marcus and David and every other man who'd tried to break her. He saw the strength she'd forged in fire.
And he wanted it.
Diamond stopped at the window, pressing her forehead against the glass. The envelope on the desk seemed to mock her. Freedom was right there. One phone call, one choice. But freedom meant running. And she'd spent her entire life learning not to run from hard things. She'd fought David instead of accepting his abuse. She'd worked 3 jobs to keep her family housed instead of giving up. She'd built a life from nothing because she refused to be a victim of circumstance. Was walking away from Chung's strength or cowardice? The clock read 8 minutes. Diamond turned from the window and looked at the locked door. Behind it stood a man who'd orchestrated her life for 7 months. Who'd used his brother as a pawn. Who'd trapped her in this room and given her an impossible choice. A man who'd also been honest about his violence. Who'd offered her power alongside danger. Who'd looked at her like she was worth the risk of bringing into his brutal world. She picked up the envelope. Felt its weight. Its promise of escape. Then she set it back down on the desk. Her hands were steady now. 5 minutes left, and Diamond Johnson had made her decision. Diamond moved to the door before she could second-guess herself. Her decision was made, but she'd be damned if she'd wait like an obedient dog for Chung to return. She tried the handle. Locked, as expected. She pressed her ear against the dark wood, listening. Footsteps in the corridor. Low voices speaking Korean. At least 2 guards, maybe 3. She stepped back, scanning the study with fresh eyes. The windows, sealed as Chung had said, but she tested them anyway. Locked tight. The kind of security that kept people out but also kept people in. She examined the bookshelves, looking for anything. A hidden door, a panic button, some secret passage like in the movies. Nothing. Just leather-bound books in Korean and English, expensive and untouched. The air vent was too small. The chimney of the decorative fireplace. She crossed to it, knelt, looked up, blocked with mesh security grating. Every exit sealed. Every escape route anticipated. Diamond sat back on her heels, understanding settling over her like a weight. This wasn't just a study. It was a test. Chung had locked her in here knowing she'd try to escape, wanting to see if she'd panic, if she'd break, if she'd prove him wrong about her strength. Bastard, she muttered. She stood, brushed off her dress, and made her decision. If she couldn't escape, she'd confront. Diamond crossed to the door and pounded on it. 3 sharp strikes that echoed through the wood. I know you're out there. Open this door. Silence. Then footsteps approaching. Miss Johnson. A male voice, Korean accented, apologetic. Mr. Park gave instructions. I don't care about his instructions. I want to speak to Yejun Park Yejun. Now. A pause. Low conversation in Korean. Then one moment. She waited, pulse hammering with anger that felt cleaner than fear. 3 minutes passed.
5.
Then she heard it. Yejun's voice, hesitant, almost pained. Diamond, I can't. Open this door, or I start screaming. Her voice was steel. I'll tell everyone in this house that I'm being held against my will. Let's see how the legitimate side of the family handles that publicity. Another pause. Then the lock clicked. The door opened slowly. Yejun stood in the corridor, flanked by 2 security personnel who looked like they could snap her in half without breaking a sweat. But it was Yejun's expression that made her chest tighten. Genuine guilt, regret, and something else. Resignation. Leave us, she said to the guards. They looked at Yejun. He nodded once, and they retreated down the corridor, still within sight but out of earshot. Yejun stepped into the study, closing the door behind him. In the low light, he looked younger than 32. Tired.
Human.
I'm sorry, he said immediately. I know that doesn't mean anything now, but I'm sorry. You lied to me for 6 months. Diamond's voice was quiet, but every word cut. Every coffee date. Every late-night conversation. Every time you kissed me, you knew. You knew I was never yours. I know. He shoved his hands in his pockets, unable to meet her eyes. I knew from the first day. When I walked into your restaurant, it was on his orders. Everything was on his orders. Then why go through with it? She moved closer, forcing him to look at her. If you felt guilty, if you knew it was wrong, why not just tell me? Because he's my brother. Yejun's voice cracked. Because this family is everything. Because when Chung decides something, you don't question it. You execute. I'm not a business transaction. To him, everything is. Yejun finally met her eyes, and she saw the truth there. He'd been trapped in this too, just in a different cage. He saw you 8 months ago. You probably don't even remember. It was a Tuesday night, late shift. Some Wall Street asshole grabbed your wrist when you delivered his check. You twisted his arm behind his back and told him if he touched you again, you'd break it. Diamond remembered. The guy had been drunk, aggressive, handsy with all the female staff. Chum was at the bar, Yejun continued. He watched the whole thing. Watched you handle it without calling for help, without backing down. He came home that night and told me he'd found her. The one. Yejun's laugh was bitter. I thought he was crazy. But then he had you investigated. And the more he learned, the more certain he became. So he sent you. He sent me because he knew if he approached you himself, you'd see the danger immediately. You'd run. But me. Yejun gestured to himself. I'm safe.
Charming.
Harmless. I could get close without triggering your defenses. Could let you relax, let you trust, let you believe you'd found something good. While he watched, every date, every text, he read them all. Yejun's voice dropped to something almost pitying. He had cameras installed in the restaurant and the coffee shop where we met, outside your apartment. He knew your schedule better than you did. Nausea rolled through her stomach. That's insane. That's how he operates. When he wants something, he doesn't leave anything to chance. Yejun moved to the bar, poured himself a drink with shaking hands. I tried to talk him out of it. Told him this wasn't how normal people dated. He said he wasn't normal people and neither were you. What does that mean? It means he recognized something in you. Something that matched what's in him. Yejun downed the whiskey in one swallow. He said you were a survivor. That you'd understand survival requires ruthlessness. That you'd see the protection he was offering instead of just the cage. Diamond thought of her decision 5 minutes ago, of choosing to stay, and hated that Chung had been right. Did you ever actually like me? The question came out smaller than she intended. Or was it all acting? Yejun's expression softened. I liked you. I like you. You're smart and strong and funny, and in another life, in another family, maybe I would have had a chance. He set the glass down. But I've never had a chance. Not with you. You were always his. Stop saying that. Her voice rose. I'm not an object. I'm not territory to be claimed. I know. Yejun approached her slowly, carefully. But my brother doesn't see it that way. To him, you're not property. He struggled for the word. You're essential. Like air. Like survival. He needs you the way normal people need oxygen, and he won't stop until he has you. And you're okay with that? With him treating people like possessions? I don't have a choice. The admission was raw. This family is built on loyalty, Diamond. Absolute loyalty. If I'd refused to help him, if I'd warned you, if I'd done anything to interfere, he didn't finish the sentence.
Didn't need to.
Diamond understood. Chung's control extended even to his own blood. You could have told me, she said quietly. At any point, you could have told me the truth. And you would have run. And he would have found you anyway. At least this way, you got 6 months of something close to normal before. Yejun gestured vaguely. Before this. Before he trapped me. Before he claimed you. Yejun corrected, and there was no judgment in his voice. Just fact. There's a difference. He doesn't want you broken, Diamond. He wants you exactly as you are, strong, defiant, unafraid. That's why he chose you. She thought of Chung's words in this very room. I found someone real, and I'm not letting you go. I should hate you, Diamond said. You should. Yejun smiled sadly. But you won't.
Because you understand now.
You understand that we're all trapped in our own ways. Me in his shadow. You in his sight. Even him, trapped by whatever broke him enough to make him think this is love. The word hung between them. Love. As if obsession and possession could be called by such a gentle name. What happens now? Diamond asked. Yejun moved to the door, opening it. The guards were still there, patient and immovable. Now you tell him your decision. And if you're smart, he looked back at her, something almost like pity in his eyes. You'll accept. Because fighting him is exhausting, and losing to him is inevitable. He left the door open. An invitation. A surrender. Diamond stood alone in the study, the envelope still on the desk, her decision already made but feeling heavier now with Yejun's resignation echoing in her ears. The clock had run out. Time to face the man who'd orchestrated everything. Diamond found Chung exactly where she expected, standing in the corridor outside his study, leaning against the wall with the patience of a predator who'd always known his prey would come to him. He straightened when he saw her, his eyes tracking her approach with that unnerving focus that made her feel both exposed and seen. Time's up, he said. I know. She stopped 3 feet away, maintaining distance, maintaining control. I'm staying. Something flickered in his expression, satisfaction, possession, victory. He moved toward her, but she held up one hand. On my terms.
He stopped.
The corridor went silent except for the distant sound of the orchestra still playing in the ballroom. Even the guards seemed to hold their breath. Your terms, he repeated, his voice carefully neutral. Yes. Diamond straightened her spine, channeling every ounce of strength she'd spent years building. You said you wanted a partner. Someone who could stand beside you, not behind you. If that's true, then we do this my way, or we don't do it at all. Chung's expression shifted into something dangerous and intrigued. I'm listening. First, I'm not property. I'm not a possession. I'm not something you acquired. Her voice was steel. You speak about me, you introduce me, you treat me as an equal partner in whatever this is. Not as your woman. Not as something you own. As someone who chose to be here. Even though you didn't have a choice. I always had a choice. The lie tasted like power. I could have called that number. Could have run. I'm choosing to stay, which means I have just as much power in this arrangement as you do. His eyes narrowed, assessing. Continue. Second, I don't hide who I am. Not my background, not my race, not where I came from. She thought of the whispers in the ballroom, the judgment in those elite eyes. I'm a black woman from Queens who worked her way up from nothing. If your world has a problem with that, they can take it up with you. But I won't apologize, and I won't make myself smaller to make anyone comfortable. I would never ask you to. His voice carried an edge of offense, as if the suggestion itself was insulting. Third, my family is off limits. My mother, my sister. Whatever protection you're offering me extends to them, but they don't get pulled into this world. They don't get investigated, surveilled, or used as leverage. They stay safe and they stay ignorant. Already arranged. He stepped closer, and this time she let him. The moment I decided you were mine, I had security assigned to them. They don't know, and they won't. But no one touches them without going through me first. The casual way he said it, the certainty that he'd already protected her family without being asked, should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt like proof of something she hadn't wanted to acknowledge. He'd been planning this down to the smallest detail. Fourth, she took a breath, knowing this one would cut deeper. I need to know that what you feel isn't just obsession. That this isn't just about winning, about claiming something you decided you wanted. Because if that's all this is, it'll destroy us both. Chung moved close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. His hand lifted, fingers threading through her hair at the nape of her neck, possessive but careful. You think I spent 7 months watching you because I'm bored? His voice dropped to something raw, almost vulnerable. You think I orchestrated this entire plan because I collect people like art? He pulled her closer, his other hand settling on her waist. I've had women throw themselves at me my entire life, Diamond. Money, power, danger, they're aphrodisiacs for a certain type. I could have any of them with a glance. Then why me? Because they want what I have. You want nothing from me. His thumb traced her jawline. Because when I read the report about you covering your coworker's shift so she could go to her son's school play, I realized you were the kind of person I'd never be.
Selfless. Good.
Real. His eyes bored into hers. Because I'm the monster in the dark, and you're the light I shouldn't be allowed anywhere near. And I've never wanted anything more in my life. The confession hit like a physical blow. This wasn't rehearsed. This was truth, ugly and desperate and terrifyingly sincere. That's not love, Diamond whispered. That's need. It's both. No hesitation. And it's non-negotiable. I need you the way I need air. But I also, he struggled with the word, as if it were foreign to him. I love the way you look at me like I'm still human. I love that you're terrified but standing here anyway. I love that you're giving me terms instead of just surrendering. You love that I'm fighting you. I love that you think you can win. His smile was dark, dangerous, absolutely genuine. Because it means when you finally accept that we're inevitable, it won't be because I broke you. It'll be because you chose it. Diamond's heart hammered against her ribs. She should be running. Should be horrified. Should be doing anything except standing here feeling her resistance crumble under the weight of his certainty. I have more terms, she managed. Of course you do. He didn't release her, didn't step back. Name them. I keep working. Maybe not at the restaurant, but I need purpose. I need something that's mine, separate from all of this. She gestured vaguely at the estate, the empire, the violence he represented. I won't be a trophy sitting in a gilded cage. You'll have access to anything you want. Business ventures, charities, education. Whatever gives you purpose. His hand tightened fractionally in her hair. As long as you come home to me. And if I need space, if I need time alone, time to think, time to breathe without your surveillance, you'll have it. His jaw tightened. Within reason. I can't turn off my need to keep you safe, Diamond. But I can try to give you room to exist within that protection. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't freedom. But it was more than she'd expected. Last term, she said quietly, if I do this, if I stand beside you, if I accept this life, you don't get to hold my past against me. My rules, my scars, my reasons for building walls. You don't use them as weapons. You don't manipulate them to keep me compliant. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe. Recognition. I would never. His voice was fierce. Your strength is what drew me to you. I'm not interested in destroying it. I want to stand next to it, protect it, worship it. He leaned closer, his mouth brushing her ear. I want to watch you burn down anyone who underestimates you, and then I want to burn down whatever's left. God help her. The promise sent heat straight through her core. Then we have an agreement. Her voice was steadier than her pulse. I'll stand beside you. But I'm not your possession. I'm your partner. And if you ever treat me like anything less, you'll destroy me. He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes, his smile sharp and satisfied. I'm counting on it. He released her, stepped back, and extended his hand. Not a demand. An offer. Ready to meet the family? As mine. Diamond looked at his hand. Thought of every choice that had led her here, every scar that had made her strong enough to survive this moment. Thought of the terrifying, exhilarating reality of choosing the monster instead of running from him. She placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, warm and certain and absolutely unbreakable. Let's go claim your crown, he murmured. And Diamond Johnson walked back into the ballroom as the woman who'd chosen her fate instead of accepting it. Chung led her away from the ballroom, through corridors that twisted deeper into the estate's private quarters. His hand stayed wrapped around hers, not pulling, not dragging, but anchoring.
Claiming.
The guards they passed averted their eyes, as if witnessing something sacred or forbidden. They stopped at a door carved with intricate designs, Korean characters Diamond couldn't read. Chung pushed it open to reveal a suite that looked like it belonged in a luxury hotel. Cream walls, dark wood furniture, a massive four-poster bed draped in silk. But it was the three women waiting inside that made Diamond's breath catch. They stood in a line, perfectly postured, dressed in elegant black. The oldest looked about 60, silver-haired and sharp-eyed. The other two were younger, maybe 30, their expressions neutral but assessing. This is Mrs. Kwan, Chung said, gesturing to the older woman. She's been with my family for 20 years. She'll help you prepare. Prepare for what? For them to see you as I do. He lifted her hand to his lips, the gesture somehow both courtly and possessive. As someone who belongs. Before Diamond could respond, he was gone, the door closing with a soft click that felt far too final. Mrs. Kwan stepped forward, her eyes traveling over Diamond with clinical precision. Your hair needs adjusting. The dress is acceptable but requires tailoring. And you'll need proper jewelry. She spoke in English, heavily accented but precise. We have 30 minutes. 30 minutes for what? To transform you. Mrs. Kwan's expression softened fractionally. Mr. Park Chung has chosen you.
This is not a small thing.
When you walk back into that ballroom, every eye will judge whether you deserve to stand beside him. We make certain they have no choice but to accept. One of the younger women, introduced as Jimin, guided Diamond to a vanity while the other, Sujin, disappeared into what looked like a walk-in closet. Diamond caught her reflection in the mirror. Her makeup was smudged from stress, her hair falling loose from its updo, her eyes carrying the weight of the last hour's revelations. She looked exhausted, overwhelmed.
Human.
Sit, Mrs. Kwan commanded gently. Diamond sat. Jimin's hands were surprisingly gentle as she unpinned Diamond's hair, letting it fall in waves past her shoulders. Beautiful texture, she murmured in Korean, then seemed to catch herself. We keep them natural. Show them you do not hide. The comment felt pointed, intentional, as if Chung had already briefed them on Diamond's terms. Mrs. Kwan began working on Diamond's face, removing the smudged makeup with practiced efficiency. You are afraid, she observed matter-of-fact. Yes. Good. Fear means you understand what you are accepting. She began applying fresh foundation, her touch clinical. But you are also brave. I see this. Mr. Park sees this.
A pause.
His mother will see this too. This matters. Diamond thought of Madam Park Sun-hee's sharp assessment earlier. She doesn't approve of me. She approves of strength, of survival, of women who do not break. Mrs. Kwan's eyes met Diamond's in the mirror. You have already proven this by standing here, by not running when given the chance.
How did she know about that?
Sujin emerged from the closet carrying the red dress, Diamond's red dress. But something was different. The fabric seemed richer somehow, the cut more precise. We adjusted while you spoke with younger Mr. Park, Sujin explained. Now it fits perfect. They helped Diamond out of the dress she wore, their movements efficient and impersonal, like surgeons preparing for operation. When they slipped the altered dress back on, Diamond understood. The fit was flawless now, hugging every curve without constraint. The neckline sat perfectly, the hem hit exactly at mid-thigh. The dress had gone from beautiful to devastating. Red is bold choice, Mrs. Kwan observed, zipping Diamond into the garment. In Korean tradition, red symbolizes passion, power, protection from evil spirits. Her lips curved slightly. Mr. Park chose well. You are all of these things. Jimin worked on Diamond's hair, pulling it back, but leaving pieces loose to frame her face. Not severe, not soft, something in between. Controlled but natural. The style revealed her neck, her shoulders, the strong line of her jaw. You have warrior face, Jimin said softly. Good bone structure. You do not need to hide behind beauty. You use it as weapon. Mrs. Kwan returned with a jewelry box, black lacquered wood inlaid with mother of pearl. She opened it to reveal pieces that made Diamond's breath catch. Not the delicate pearls or diamonds she'd expected, but something else entirely. A choker of black silk and platinum, stark and modern, designed to draw the eye to her throat. Matching cuff bracelets, substantial and bold. Earrings, simple platinum drops that caught the light with every movement. Mr. Park's mother wore these, Mrs. Kwan said quietly. When she first stood beside his father, 40 years ago, she was not Korean. She was not wealthy. She was not what the family expected. The older woman's eyes met Diamond's. But she was strong, and she earned her place. The revelation hit hard. Madam Park hadn't been born into this world either. She gives permission for you to wear them, Mrs. Kwan continued. This is her approval, her blessing. Diamond's hands shook as Mrs. Kwan fastened the choker around her neck. The weight of it felt symbolic, like a collar and a crown at once. The cuff bracelets snapped into place with quiet authority. Jimin applied makeup with an artist's precision, bold red lips to match the dress, dark liner that made Diamond's eyes look fierce rather than afraid. Highlighter caught her cheekbones, made her look carved from something stronger than flesh. When they finally stepped back, Diamond barely recognized herself. The woman in the mirror looked dangerous, powerful, unapologetic. The dress blazed against her deep brown skin like war paint. The jewelry proclaimed ownership and authority in equal measure. Her natural hair framed her face in a way that said she had nothing to hide and no interest in hiding it. She looked like she belonged. "Stand," Mrs. Kwan instructed. Diamond stood. Her legs were steady now, her spine straight. She looked at her reflection and saw what Chung had seen, not a waitress from Queens, but a woman who'd survived enough to stand in fire without burning. "Walk," Mrs. Kwan said. Diamond crossed the room. Her stride was confident, her shoulders back. The dress moved with her like liquid defiance.
Again.
With purpose. "You are not walking to them. They are waiting for you." Diamond walked again, and this time she felt it. The shift from surviving to claiming. From accepting fate to wielding it. Mrs. Kwan smiled, the first genuine warmth Diamond had seen from her. "Perfect. You are ready." A knock at the door. Chung entered without waiting for permission, and the air pressure in the room changed. His eyes locked onto Diamond, and everything else fell away. He crossed to her slowly, his gaze traveling from her face to the choker at her throat to the way the dress proclaimed everything she was. When he reached her, his hand lifted to trace the platinum band at her neck. "My mother's," he said quietly. "I know. She only gives these to women she believes will survive our world." His eyes met hers, dark and burning. "She sees what I see." "And what's that?" His hand slid from her throat to cup her face. "That you were already dangerous before you became mine."
Now.
His smile was slow, predatory, proud. "Now you're absolutely lethal." He stepped back, offered his arm. "Ready to show them who you are?" Diamond placed her hand on his arm, felt the solid strength beneath the expensive fabric. She caught her reflection one last time, a woman transformed not into something she wasn't, but into the fullest expression of what she'd always been. Strong, defiant, unbreakable. "Let's go," she said. And Diamond Johnson walked toward her coronation. The corridor leading to the main staircase felt endless. Chung walked beside her, his hand resting at the small of her back, not guiding, not controlling, but present. A reminder that she wasn't walking into this alone, even though every step felt like it belonged to her. They stopped at the top of the grand staircase, hidden from view by the curve of the wall. Below, the orchestra had gone quiet. Conversation continued in low murmurs, but Diamond could feel the anticipation building like static electricity before a storm. "They're waiting," Chung said quietly. "My father made the announcement while you were being prepared. They know you've accepted." Diamond's pulse hammered. What exactly did he say? That I've chosen my partner. That she will be presented tonight. That anyone who disrespects her disrespects me. His hand pressed more firmly against her spine. That any challenge to you is a declaration of war. The words should have been reassuring. Instead, they felt like a spotlight about to illuminate every vulnerability she'd ever tried to hide. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "Good." He turned to face her, his hands framing her face with surprising gentleness. "Terror means you understand the stakes. But you're going to walk down those stairs anyway because that's who you are." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "You've been walking into fire your whole life, Diamond. This is just the first time you're doing it in front of an audience." He stepped back, creating space between them. "I'll go first. When the music starts, you follow. Take your time. Let them look. Let them see exactly what they're dealing with." And then, his smile was dark, possessive, proud. Then you take my hand, and we show them that you're exactly where you belong. He disappeared around the corner. Diamond heard his footsteps on the staircase, heard the crowd's reaction. A collective intake of breath, then silence, so complete she could hear her own heartbeat. Then Chung's voice, carrying through the ballroom with absolute authority. Thank you for your patience. I'd like to introduce someone. A pause. The orchestra began to play, something slow, dramatic, building. Diamond took a breath, felt the weight of Madame Park's jewelry at her throat, felt the red dress like armor against her skin. She thought of Marcus and eviction notices, of David and the bruises on her neck, of every moment that had taught her to survive. She thought of Chung's words, "You were already dangerous before you became mine." Diamond stepped around the corner. The ballroom lay below her like a stage, and every single person had turned to watch. 50, 60 faces, all frozen mid-conversation, all staring upward. The crystal chandeliers cast light that felt more like exposure than illumination. But Diamond didn't look at them. Her eyes found Chung at the bottom of the staircase, and everything else disappeared. He stood perfectly still, watching her with an intensity that would have made her stumble if she hadn't already decided to walk into this fire willingly. She began her descent. Each step was deliberate, measured. The dress moved around her legs like liquid flame. The jewelry caught the light with every movement, declaring her presence before she even spoke. Her hand trailed along the banister, not for support, but for effect. She was aware, distantly, of the crowd's reaction.
Gasps.
Whispers. The sharp intake of breath from someone who clearly hadn't expected this, hadn't expected her. She caught a glimpse of Yejun standing near the bar, his expression caught between pride and pain. Saw Madame Park Sun-hee near the orchestra, her face unreadable but her posture approving. But Diamond's focus stayed locked on Chung. He watched her descend, like a man witnessing something sacred and profane at once. His expression had shifted into something raw, hunger, possession, pride, and something else she couldn't quite name. Something that looked almost like awe. Halfway down the staircase, Diamond felt the shift happen. The terror that had gripped her heart loosened, replaced by something fiercer. She wasn't a waitress from Queens being paraded in front of Manhattan's elite. She was a woman who'd survived everything life had thrown at her, and she was choosing to stand beside the most dangerous man in the room. The power in that choice was intoxicating. 3/4 of the way down, she let herself look at the crowd. Really look. Saw the men in expensive suits assessing her value, calculating her weaknesses. Saw the women in designer gowns judging her dress, her jewelry, her right to be here. Saw the family members trying to decide if she was threat or asset. Diamond smiled. Not a polite smile. A challenge. Judge me all you want. I'm still standing here. The final steps felt like crossing a threshold. The marble floor beneath her heels was cold and solid.
Real.
The orchestra swelled to a crescendo, then went quiet. The room held its breath. Chung closed the distance between them in 3 strides. He didn't offer his hand, he took hers, his fingers threading through hers with absolute certainty. His other hand went to her waist, pulling her against him in a gesture that was pure claim, pure possession, pure declaration. They're all staring, Diamond murmured. Let them. His voice was low, meant only for her. Let them see exactly who you are. Let them understand that you're not here because I forced you. You're here because you chose this. Did I? She met his eyes, the question genuine. Yes. No hesitation. You could have run, could have called that number, could have fought harder. But you didn't, because some part of you recognized what I saw from the beginning. He leaned closer, his mouth at her ear. You were meant for this. For me. For a life that matches your fire instead of extinguishing it. Chairman Park Min-jun appeared at Chung's elbow, his expression pleased, calculated, approving. Gentlemen. Ladies. His voice carried across the ballroom. I'd like you all to meet Miss Diamond Johnson. As of tonight, she is under the Park family's protection. She stands as my son's chosen partner. He paused, letting the words settle. And anyone who forgets this will answer to both of us. The threat was wrapped in civility, but it was still a threat. The crowd understood. Diamond saw it in the way postures shifted, in the way eyes that had held judgment now held caution. Madame Park's son he approached, her movements graceful and deliberate. She stopped in front of Diamond, her sharp eyes scanning the younger woman's face, the jewelry at her throat, the way Chung's hand remained possessive at Diamond's waist. Then she smiled. Small. Approving.
Genuine.
Welcome to the family, Diamond Johnson, she said in English clear and precise. You wear my jewelry well. I think perhaps you will survive us after all. It was blessing and challenge rolled into one. Thank you, Madam Park, Diamond replied, her voice steady. I intend to. The older woman's smile widened.
Good.
We do not have use for weak women here. She turned to her grandson. Chung, introduce her properly. Let them all see what you have chosen. Chung's hand tightened on Diamond's waist. He led her further into the crowd, and people parted like water, creating space for them to pass. He introduced her to uncles, cousins, business associates, each introduction a reinforcement of her new position, her new power, her new life. And through it all, Diamond kept her spine straight, her smile sharp, her presence unapologetic. She had ascended the stairs as a woman walking into fire. She emerged on the other side as someone who could make the flames bow. The introductions blurred together. Names Diamond would forget by morning, faces that carried varying degrees of judgment and calculation. But Chung never released her, his presence a constant anchor at her side, his hand possessive at her waist. Every time someone's gaze lingered too long, every time a question bordered on invasive, his grip would tighten fractionally. A reminder. A warning. They were circling back toward the center of the ballroom when Chung stopped abruptly. Diamond followed his gaze to find Yejun standing a few feet away, holding 2 glasses of champagne, his expression carefully neutral. Brother, Chung said, his voice carrying an edge Diamond couldn't quite identify. Brother, Yejun replied. He extended one of the glasses toward Diamond. Congratulations. You look, he paused, searching for words. You look like you belong. Diamond took the champagne, their fingers brushing briefly. Thank you. For everything. The words carried weight they both understood. For 6 months of careful deception. For genuine moments within the lies. For stepping aside so she could walk toward the man who'd orchestrated it all. Yejun's smile was sad but sincere. Take care of her, he said to Chung. I intend to. Chung's response was absolute. Yejun nodded once, then disappeared back into the crowd. Diamond watched him go, feeling the finality of it. Whatever connection they'd shared, real or manufactured, was over. She was standing beside his brother now. There was no going back. The orchestra shifted tempo, moving from background ambience to something more intentional. A waltz. Elegant, traditional, deliberate. Chung took the champagne from her hand, passed both glasses to a server without looking, and turned to face her fully. His expression had shifted into something darker, hungrier, absolutely focused. Ready to dance with the right brother? He asked, his voice low enough that only she could hear. Diamond met his eyes, saw the challenge there, the certainty, the claim. She thought of 6 months of dancing around the truth with Yejun's 6 months of carefully choreographed deception. 6 months of being vetted, tested, prepared for this moment. She smiled, slow and defiant. I was never dancing with him. I was just waiting for you to cut in. Something blazed in Chung's eyes. Triumph, possession, desire so raw it nearly burned. He pulled her onto the dance floor before she could take another breath. The crowd shifted, creating space, forming a circle around them like witnesses to a coronation. Or acclaiming. Diamond was aware of every eye tracking their movement, but she stopped caring. Let them watch. Let them see exactly who she'd chosen. Chung's hand settled at her waist, pulling her closer than propriety demanded. His other hand captured hers, his grip firm and absolutely certain. Diamond's free hand went to his shoulder, feeling the solid muscle beneath the expensive fabric, the coiled strength he kept leashed in public. They began to move. Chung led with the same command he'd shown in everything else, absolute authority, zero room for doubt. But Diamond matched him step for step, her body finding the rhythm instinctively. They moved together like they'd been dancing for years instead of minutes, like this had always been inevitable. "You're good at this," she murmured. "I was trained." His eyes never left hers. "Every skill that might be useful for navigating high society, I learned. But this," he pulled her even closer, eliminating what little space remained between them. "This is the first time I've wanted to dance." The confession was quiet, honest, devastating. Diamond's breath caught as he spun her, the red dress flaring around her legs before he pulled her back against him. The move was possessive, deliberate, designed to show every person watching exactly who she belonged to. But somewhere in the midst of the display, Diamond realized the truth. This wasn't just him claiming her. She was claiming him right back. Every step, every movement, every moment she stayed in his arms was a choice.
Her choice.
"I should hate you," she said quietly, "for everything you did, everything you orchestrated. You should." His hand tightened at her waist. "But you don't."
No.
The admission felt like surrender and victory at once. "I don't." "Why?" The question was raw, almost vulnerable. Diamond thought of her 3 broken rules. Thought of Marcus and David and every man who'd tried to take from her without giving anything back. Thought of Chung's brutal honesty, his protection of her family, his demand that she stand beside him as an equal rather than behind him as property. "Because you're the first man who saw my scars and wanted them," she said. "Who looked at my walls and decided to stand outside them instead of trying to tear them down. Who gave me a choice, even if it was a terrible one, instead of just taking what you wanted." "I'm a monster, Diamond." "I know." She leaned closer, her mouth near his ear. "But you're my monster now." She felt him shudder against her, felt the careful control he maintained crack just slightly. His hand in hers tightened until it bordered on painful, but she didn't pull away. Didn't want to. The waltz built toward its crescendo, the orchestra swelling with dramatic intensity. Chung spun her one final time, then pulled her back hard against his chest. They stopped moving, frozen in the center of the dance floor, the music reaching its peak around them. "Mine," he said, the word absolute. "Yours," she agreed, then added, her voice carrying steel beneath the surrender. "And you're mine." His smile was slow, dangerous, absolutely genuine. "Yes." He kissed her. It wasn't gentle, wasn't careful, wasn't appropriate for the audience surrounding them. His hand threaded through her hair, tilting her head back, deepening the kiss until Diamond forgot where she ended and he began. She felt his claim in every second of it, the way he possessed her mouth, the way his other hand gripped her waist hard enough to leave marks, the way he kissed her like he was branding his name onto her soul. But Diamond kissed him back with equal ferocity, bit his lower lip hard enough to make him groan. fisted her hand in his jacket, pulling him impossibly closer. If he was claiming her, she was claiming right back. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the ballroom had gone absolutely silent. Every eye was locked on them, witnessing something that felt far too intimate for public consumption. Diamond didn't care. She looked at Chung, at his dark eyes burning with possession, at the slight red mark on his lip from her teeth, at the way he was looking at her like she was the only person in the world who mattered. And she understood. Some love stories began with flowers and poetry, with gentle courtship and careful romance, with all the soft, beautiful things the world said love should be. Hers had begun with surveillance and manipulation, with orchestrated deception and impossible choices, with poison and blood and a man dangerous enough to burn down the world but careful enough to never burn her. It shouldn't work. By every logical measure, this should be a disaster waiting to happen. But standing in Chung Ye-jun's arms, wearing his mother's jewelry, feeling his absolute certainty that she belonged to him matched only by her own certainty that he belonged to her, Diamond realized she'd stopped caring about what should be. This was what was. Brutal and beautiful and absolutely forever. Chung leaned down, his mouth at her ear, his voice rough with promise. "Take me home." Diamond smiled against his neck, feeling power and surrender tangled together in a way that made her dizzy. "Lead the way." He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes, and what she saw there stole her breath. Not just possession, not just desire. Something deeper, more permanent, more terrifying. Devotion. Chung offered his arm, and Diamond took it. They walked through the crowd together, past Ye-jun's sad smile, past the chairman's satisfied nod, past Madame Park's approving gaze, toward whatever came next. Her old life was gone.
Her rules were shattered.
Her safety was compromised. But Diamond Johnson had never felt more powerful in her life. She'd walked into fire and emerged as something new. Something dangerous. Something absolutely unbreakable. And she was exactly where she belonged. And that's how Diamond Johnson, a waitress from Queens with 3 unbreakable rules, became the queen of the Korean underworld. Not because she was forced, not because she was weak, but because she recognized that sometimes the most dangerous choice is also the most honest one. She could have run. She could have taken that envelope, made that call, disappeared into a new life. But Diamond understood something most of us spend our whole lives avoiding. Real love isn't safe. Real partnership isn't comfortable. And real power comes from choosing your cage instead of pretending you're free. Chung Ye-jun didn't rescue her. He didn't save her. He saw her strength and demanded she bring all of it into his world. And Diamond? She walked into that fire with her eyes wide open, not as a victim, but as a woman who'd finally found someone strong enough to stand beside her instead of trying to stand over her. Some of you are probably thinking, this is toxic. This is manipulation. This is everything we're taught to run from. And you're not wrong. But here's what makes this story hit different. Diamond never lost herself. She set her terms. She demanded her respect. She claimed her power. She transformed a prison into a throne by refusing to be anything less than what she was, a survivor who'd earned her scars and wore them like armor. This isn't a story about a woman who needed saving. This is a story about a woman who was already dangerous, meeting a man honest enough to admit he was too. And sometimes, that brutal honesty is more romantic than 1,000 empty promises. Now here's what I need from you. If Diamond's journey resonated with you, if you've ever felt like you had to choose between safety and passion, between playing it safe and stepping into something terrifying and real, drop a fire in the comments right now. Tell me, would you have taken the envelope and run? Or would you have walked down those stairs in that red dress and claimed your crown? I want to hear your honest answer. No judgment, just truth. Hit that subscribe button if you want more stories about complicated women making dangerous choices and owning every second of it. We're building a community here of people who understand that love isn't always pretty, power isn't always clean, and sometimes the right choice is the one that terrifies you most. Smash that like button if you're tired of safe, predictable romance and you want stories with teeth. Stories where the women are just as dangerous as the men, where the power dynamics shift and evolve, where love is earned, not given. And here's the big one. What story do you want to see next? Drop your suggestions in the comments. The mafia boss's rival who kidnaps the wrong woman and falls for her instead? The billionaire's daughter who goes undercover in her father's criminal empire? The assassin who's hired to kill a tech CEO but ends up protecting him instead? Your comments literally shape what I create next, so speak up. Before you go, I want you to remember something Diamond learned. Your past doesn't define you unless you let it. Your scars don't make you broken. They make you bulletproof. And when someone sees all of you, the good, the bad, the terrifying, and still chooses to stand beside you, that's not weakness. That's the most powerful thing in the world. Diamond Johnson walked into fire, and it came out forged in steel. What are you going to walk into? I'll see you in the next story. Until then, stay dangerous, stay powerful, and never apologize for taking up space. Now go, subscribe, comment, like, and let's build something powerful together. This is your reminder. You're not too much. You're not too damaged. You're not too complicated. You're exactly enough. And somewhere out there, someone is waiting for all of that fire.
Peace out.
And remember, always choose the right brother.